Welcome everybody to the fourth IGC events webinar focused on geothermal, which is presented by Think Geoenergy and Enerchange. My name is Jochen Schneider. I am the Director of Enerchange and glad to welcome Phlippe Dumas, the Secretary General of the EGEC. Just shortly to mention, the whole session is recorded and will be available next week on our YouTube channel. Please follow us also on LinkedIn, YouTube and Twitter, and award the webinars with likes or comments to improve ourselves. After the presentation, there will be a Q&A session via the chat. Here we encourage you to ask questions, which I will forward to Phlippe. And now it is a great honor for me to introduce Phlippe Dumas. Phlippe Dumas studied economic and European affairs in Lyon and Brussels. He first worked in a European engineering company after his studies as a representative in Brussels for EU affairs. In 2007, he moved then to the European Geothermal Energy Council, the European Geothermal Association, where he started as project manager for European projects. Since September 2008, 10 years after the foundation of EGEC, Phlippe became the EGEC Secretary General, managing the association. EGEC unites more than 120 companies and organizations representing more than 500 entities from 25 European countries, working in the geothermal field in Europe. The main goal of EGEC is to foster market development for geothermal energy and to work for improvement of business conditions in Europe. Phlippe is author and co-author of several publications like market reports, policy, financial and socio-economical papers, research innovation agendas and roadmaps, and frequently contributor to conferences, workshops and seminars. He is active in more than 20 EU-funded research and market uptake projects and climate and energy with a focus on geothermal. So he is also expert for the European policy and has got good contacts to the EU Commission. Today, we will speak about the European Green Deal that was announced some months ago. Phlippe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jochen, for this kind introduction. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to present you and to deliver this presentation, A Very Green Deal. Indeed, Jochen, I'm quite used to deliver presentation, but this year more in the format of webinar than conference. I was just able to deliver a presentation during a conference in February before we had this pandemic with blockers. So today I will present you kind of policy framework, but with a lot of financial opportunities. So the policy maybe is not always the most interesting point you have to follow. Also, have in mind what is decided in Brussels after impact your business at national level. 80% of the energy national policy is linked with European affairs. So what I will present you is where we are today in the policy framework and what are the opportunities, immediate opportunities in terms of funding and future opportunities. The presentation is quite long. I will do my best to do it in 20 minutes. Feel free to visit EGEC website or any follow-up questions you may have on the policy framework. So I will do a small introduction. What we want to see, it's a faster development of geothermal energy. So what are the current market trends and how could be sure that project under development will be delivered with the right market conditions. So after presenting the market trends, I shortly present what is the current frame, really short, and what is the promising European Green Deal. Maybe you are aware, we published the market report some weeks ago. In Europe, you have 130 geothermal power plants installed. Main markets, Turkey, Italy, and Iceland, but a lot of newcomers. Geothermal district heating, we have more than 300 geothermal district heating systems installed, representing more than 2 gigawatt thermal. And we have 2 million geothermal heat pumps. Why I mentioned also heat pumps, heating and cooling, it's a big trend for the future, you will see. In terms of market development, in blue, you see what is in operation, but you can see that if all projects with a license or currently drilling are delivered, we double the number of plants in the next 5 to 6 years, because we know with geothermal, we need some time to develop a project. But to be sure this project are delivered, we need to have the right framework conditions. Geothermal maybe is not as popular as other renewables, but have all in mind that our development is also important. And you can see from when we started, of course, in 1913, the first one, but mainly after the Second World War in 1970, we have an exponential growth. In geothermal district heating, it's even more impressive. We have 300 geothermal district heating. Have in mind, first development in France. Today, France Energy Agency, ADEME, recognize that geothermal district heating is the most competitive source for heating and cooling, 3 times cheaper than a gas boiler, without any carbon pricing. We speak about 15 euro cents per kilowatt. Really competitive when you have a resource. The resource is in more than 29 countries in Europe, so it's nearly everywhere. Also here, a lot of projects under development and to be delivered in the right framework condition. Geothermal heat pumps. The trend is to have really large application, hundreds of boreholes, megawatt thermal, and here also we see a development all over Europe. So these are the market trends, promising future, but now what are the framework to deliver this project? First, you have the framework adopted last year in 2019 for the frame 2020-2030. The general policy we have seen for the period 2010-2020 with the famous 2020-2020, so 20% renewable energy, 20% gain in energy efficiency, and 20% reduction of greenhouse gas by 2020. For geothermal, didn't bring enough. We were expecting much more. So targets are important. They give a signal, a policy signal, but we need after to have the right measures to deliver our project for changing the market conditions. But if we look at what is the frame, the decision last year is to reduce by 40% greenhouse gas emissions. I say between brackets, possibly review. You see that the Green Deal plans to be even more ambitious. 32% renewable energy, and also open door from the Green Deal to have even more ambition and 30.2% improvement in energy efficiency. All countries in Europe have provided a national energy and climate plans to see how at national level we can deliver this promising. Some interesting reference to geothermal in nearly all countries with different aspects. I will not go to the detail of the different frame, but just to tell you that the energy and climate policies and framework is composed of many legislation at European level. You will have time to read, to digest this graph, but it's to show you that in terms of energy efficiency, greenhouse gas emissions, and renewables, you have a lot of elements to consider, including the traditional electricity market rules of the electricity project, and in energy efficiency, specific legislation for the energy performance of buildings, for energy efficiency, for cogeneration, for district heating. On top of that, you have, of course, the environmental regulations. But what is interesting for you, and what I was mentioning, is that it's also giving and providing some financial opportunities with funding, co-funding grants. I will present them in more detail, so I don't spend too much time here with them. We have also a lot of support in terms of innovation and research. And so here you can see the framework for research and innovation. We know that we have to develop a lot of new technologies for making our project even more costly, less costly and more efficient. So with that, we have some framework program. To take into account also the environmental regulations, because it's also here where at national level you have some constraints in terms of environmental regulations for air quality, water quality, soil protection, etc. It's all coming from some European legislation. Now coming to opportunities, I told you that member states have delivered some national climate and energy plans. We have, as EGEC, developed some country sheets country per country. Here you could see what is promised to deliver and what are the market conditions. I encourage you to look at, you have a fish per country, so you can see that in details. What have been also the recent EU initiative before the Green Deal, clean energy for Ireland, a big opportunity in Europe for geothermal heating and cooling, for other opportunities, geothermal energy for desalination of seawater. We have seen that in Greece some years ago. That's potential for replicating. And of course, for the volcanic islands, notably in Greece, potential for electricity production. Coal region in transition. I just mentioned this one. You will see later, it's one of the largest funding opportunity for geothermal in the near future. Now, what is the Green Deal? Jochen mentioned that at the start in the introduction. The Green Deal is considered today as the new roadmap for the next 5 years. We had before, for the period 2015-2020, the Energy Union, trying to combine energy efficiency, renewables, security of energy supply, research and innovation, and internal energy market. Now we have this Green Deal aiming at having a larger ambition regarding climate and energy. One ambition, climate neutral in 2050. To do that, you need to fully decarbonize the energy sector. You need to have also other elements, because we know, for example, in geothermal, if we want to decarbonize our power plants or district heating, we need to also have a transport sector decarbonized. We need to have the manufacturing of equipment decarbonized. So we need also to have other industry decarbonizing their sector. What has been the first delivery of the Green Deal, which was presented first in December 2019? First, an investment plan, the just transition mechanism, the climate law. So you will have a law establishing the climate neutrality is still under discussion, details to come in the second semester 2020. The European Industrial Strategy, launched in March, interesting for us to see notably the potential for geothermal lithium. It's one of the most promising areas in terms of industrial policy for the future. Batteries. The circular economy, important also for geothermal to have a better public acceptance, public engagement, how we can have less impact on the environment. Farm to fork, I will not go to that. It's for agri-food industry, mainly for us, interesting how we can decarbonize the agri-food industry as we're seeing the trends in Netherlands. Last but not least, this week, 8th of July, the European Strategy for Energy System Integration and on Hydrogen. I will come back to that later. With that, I've tried to map in one slide all the initiative, legislation, and finance. Legislation, I don't go to the details. It's still under discussion. What could be more ambition for renewable energy, for energy efficiency, for energy performance of building in terms of targets is the framework we have seen for the last 10 years that this framework is important, but for us, we need more concrete measures for developing and delivering our geothermal project. Here comes some interesting initiative. I mentioned circular economy, hydrogen, the renovation wave. The renovation wave is a communication coming in September, but with a lot of funding also. Building renovation, we know geothermal district heating, geothermal heat pump, thermal energy storage, we have a lot of opportunity for developing our project. The sector integration is at how we can mix and combine the electricity, the gas grid, the heating and cooling sector, how all together we can have a better integration for decarbonization of the sector. I mentioned part of the industrial strategy, the battery strategy, really promising, because today the main focus at European level is to have a sustainable value chain. In a sustainable value chain, you need to have a sustainable material. If we are able to have a large supply of lithium from geothermal with a sustainable way, we are one of the winners of this strategy. Carbon pricing and taxation, it's important in market conditions for heating and cooling that you have a carbon pricing of the heating appliance to make our technologies even more competitive. And now come the financial opportunities. First, the framework will be taxonomy and sustainability. To receive a funding for geothermal, you will need to respect some CO2 criteria in a life cycle assessment perspective. Have that in mind, it's the framework for the future. The EIB We know today the loan from EIB are done in a quite conservative way for geothermal, where we have some risk component. We expect the Climate Bank to be more open for geothermal project in terms of covering the risk profile. We'll have a new budget. I will come back to that a bit later because there have been some change. The Modernization Fund, the Innovation Fund, Horizon 2020 program, which will become after Horizon Europe, are other important opportunities. Last but not least, Next Generation EU is the recovery plan for Europe following the COVID-19 crisis. I will not go to the details of all this plan. I mentioned already the targets. I want just to discuss a bit 10E. The trans-European networks for energy are today not really open for a lot of money for geothermal, but we expect to change the rules, notably to have also the district heating component as a heat infrastructure subsidized by this project. We speak about grants, and if we can have this part covered for geothermal, it will be quite interesting. Innovation Fund, you will see later, the call is open. Have in mind your project deadline end of October. Modernization Fund, it will come 1st of January. Some details have to be defined. We are following that, notably for Central and Eastern Europe countries. The budget, I don't go to the detail, but you need to understand that if more ambition you have a budget, more funds are available also for geothermal. Part of the budget, there's this new recovery package where we see quite promising instruments like the Strategic Investment Facility for energy and green energy especially. Horizon 2020, you will see later what I want to mean with this call. In terms of initiative, I mentioned the renovation wave. So it's a strategy to come in September. And from we need to have a framework to have building renovation increasing in the future. The renovation rate today is too low. We need to increase the rate. It will offer much more opportunities for geothermal in the future. The sector integration I already mentioned, battery strategy I already mentioned, but here you can find further information. Hydrogen, today it's still a question mark for the geothermal sector, how we can contribute to the hydrogen, how it helps us to develop our sector, but let's be open minded and see how we can collaborate. Carbon pricing on heat and taxation, it's important to have a carbon pricing to make our technology even more competitive, and it's mentioned by the Commission that it's an open file and they will work on that. They also clearly say this week they will phase out direct fossil fuel subsidies and they will align the taxation of energy product and electricity, notably to have tax on gas increasing and tax on electricity decreasing. So the inputs for heat pump, for small heat pump, or for large heat pump for district heating will be lower, so even more competitiveness for geothermal. Now what comes in May 2020, a bit more than 1 month ago, the declaration from the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, that following the COVID-19 crisis, we need to have a proper answer, and they plan to do an unprecedented investment plan for tackling this crisis with opportunity, as it's a European Green Deal for renewables, including geothermal. First, they increase the budget. Secondly, they create a new instrument, Next Generation EU instrument. And finally, they set a rule, 25% of the budget should be on climate. This facility is still open for discussion. We know that there will be some European tendering scheme for renewable. We expect them to be technology specific, interesting for geothermal. The renovation financing facility is to accompany the renovation wave. And we know that also in batteries, clean vehicles, there will be opportunities for lithium. Now, what are the key financing programs already existing? I will focus mainly on the Just Transition Fund and Horizon Europe. The Just Transition Fund, you can see the figure from the first allocation. The recovery package is increasing the allocation per country. A lot of opportunity there. What are the opportunities? Opportunities are for innovation activities, switching a coal-based or a fossil fuel-based district heating to a geothermal district heating. Replacing a coal combined heat and power with also geothermal electricity and geothermal combined heat and power. And we need to deliver new technologies to deploy our technologies, and there's room of funding from this area. Innovation Fund, I told you, the call is published. I invite you 14th of July to attend the European Commission webinar. We will cover the application procedure, and you could ask first general questions. Have in mind, deadline 29th of October. The first call is only about large project. So if it's more a small scale project, notably with geothermal heat pumps, it will come later. But that is presenting also a really interesting opportunity, this Innovation Fund. As EGEC, we have organized specific workshop and webinar on this topic. Huge opportunity for innovation in geothermal. Last but not least, the European Green Deal call in the framework of Horizon 2020 is a 1 billion call. It will be published in September. There's opportunities everywhere, and we have to be open minded. For example, they want to decarbonize the transport sector to focus ports and airports. In ports, we know that for the facility, the large energy consumption is heating and cooling of buildings. And we have plenty of opportunities. Airports, decarbonized airports, one of the big line is snow melting and de-icing. And we have the technologies in geothermal to provide that to airports. It's already existing in many areas. So we have really to be open-minded in the agriculture sector, agri-food industry. We can decarbonize greenhouses. We can decarbonize aquaculture. We can provide a lot of elements. So we will also organize some webinar in September to run this call. Be open-minded. There will be maybe not many opportunities as a pure energy file, because energy will focus probably on offshore wind and on hydrogen, but on buildings, agriculture, cities for district heating, and as I said, transport, we expect opportunities. Is a 1 billion call and quite promising. With that, I end my presentation. Johan asked me to do that in 20 minutes. It was a challenge to present all the European framework. What we say is that we have done a good job during the last 10 years, but I launched 1 year ago the concept of a geothermal decade. We expect to have an exponential growth for the next 10 years. We know that we can deliver. We need to have the right framework conditions. This European Green Deal is promising. We have seen financing instruments, the new policies, and with that, we expect the geothermal decade to be successful. I thank you all for your attention. I'm available for questions, and with that, I give the floor to Johan and to present his next webinar next week.
Thank you very much, Philippe, for this nice presentation. Perhaps you can leave the picture before that we discussed about the geothermal decade. One of our first questions, you introduced now a lot of funding schemes for tackling the climate change, but what about the industry? Is the industry prepared to see a major growth of geothermal in Europe?
The current industry is ready. We have already many actors all over Europe ready to deliver. We have a lot of newcomers. As I said, I'm for 12 years the Secretary General, but involved in geothermal for nearly 20 years in November this year. And we see already a momentum for a few years, and we know that from 2012, the oil and gas sector is coming to geothermal more and more interesting. Just know, if you have followed the EGEC webinar 2 weeks ago on switching from oil to geothermal with oil and gas actors, and including Schlumberger presenting a shallow geothermal project. A subsurface oil companies investing in shallow geothermal. So of course, we will see newcomers, new industry coming, but you're perfectly right. If you want to have an exponential growth, we need to have a right strategy. We need to have the skills. We need to have equipment, especially in drilling and subsurface. We know for the surface, other actors are easy to come in the turbine, in the equipment, but subsurface and drillers will need to have a workforce and the proper skills. So of course it's a challenge, but it's an interesting challenge if we are successful.
Yes, and we see also some players entering the market. For example, Shell is doing a lot of work in the Netherlands, but on the other side, we just saw also that Schlumberger closed the office in Hanover. So there are different actions taking place at the moment.
Yes, indeed. It's what we have to see, notably from oil and gas actors. They are used to come to geothermal when it's a crisis in their sector, but not with a medium to long-term agenda. If they are committed to give a medium to long-term agenda, of course, for us, it will be easier to plan our development. Newcomers, also interesting to see what lithium, but in general minerals extraction from geothermal is bringing us to new area of development and new contact to help us to develop geothermal. What is sure, if we want to provide a lot of lithium to the batteries industry, we need to have a lot of drilling in geothermal. For that, we need to have a lot of exploration to know where to drill. So if we could have some funding to help us to show where is lithium, it will not be only for lithium, it will be for geothermal, all kind of geothermal project.
Thank you. There is another question about sharing the link for the Innovation Fund activity. Where can we find it? Can we find it on the EGEC website?
Yes, in the EGEC website, you can find the presentation during a webinar 1 month ago. You can find all our lobbying activities. I remind that we have organized a workshop, a public workshop in September 2019, where everybody was able to present his project. And here you could see so example of project. The European Commission website is really well done, and I invite you to look at the call for proposals to have in mind to attend the public webinar on the 14th of July, and don't hesitate to send an email to EGEC. You know, we are a non-profit association. We are here to help you to deliver your project.
Thank you. Another question is there a combined development of hydrocarbon fields and geothermal fields in parallel?
It exists. We have some examples. Whereas one issue today is the regulatory framework. If you have a license to extract oil and gas, it's not the same license than to extract the brine, the geothermal brine for heating, cooling, or electricity. So you need to be sure that the regulatory framework at national level is adapted and delivering that. One example is Vermillon. There's a project, European project called MEET, M-E-E-T, and they have done that in south of France, southwest of France, where indeed they had a co-production of oil and geothermal. It's quite popular also in the USA. In Europe, there will be probably some interest. We know in areas where you have gas, but sometimes you have also geothermal and gas combined in the brine. We have to see that. There's a project in Croatia on that. So it's new, it's an innovation, and we have to see how it can be delivered in the future.
Thank you. Another question is, subsurface technologies can be shared between hydrocarbon, subsurface sciences and technologies into geothermal subsurface requirements?
Yes, the traditional actors from oil and gas subsurface are also present in geothermal. Not only subsurface service, but also subsurface equipment will be interesting from oil and gas to go to geothermal. The objective is to decrease the cost, so we have to be sure that the technology coming from oil and gas will help geothermal, deep geothermal notably, to reduce the cost. That will be the challenge for the subsurface industry, but there will be opportunity. So what is the trend is probably the business model, and change the business model if we want to have this actors from oil and gas coming to geothermal.
Thank you. The next question is, in the Netherlands, the local communities have until 2020 to present their vision on heating to the national government. Included in this are biomass, industrial rest heat, geothermal, etc. Hence, with biomass getting less favorable after 2021, a steep increase in geothermal can be expected. Are there specific actions from the geothermal industry to promote geothermal energy to the local governments who often lack the specific knowledge?
Yes, on that, we have several tools to accompany them. I will distinguish geothermal heating and cooling from deep geothermal and from shallow. We know that from deep geothermal, one key challenge for municipality is to cover the risk component. For that, some tools exist already in some countries, in Switzerland, in France, in Turkey, in Netherlands, it's already existing, and we want to replicate that all over Europe. So that it's important to accompany the municipality to de-risk the project. It's important also to have a good service company to accompany them, but I think all over Europe, there's a lot of expertise in geothermal to accompany the cities. For district heating with geothermal, we see two challenges. The challenge is the profitability, so the business model of the district heating today, because in Netherlands, for example, it's not used by many people. There are many connected to individual gas boiler. You have to change the mind of the people to connect to district heating. So the business model is today one of the key challenges. And the second one is urban planning. Of course, you can provide geothermal, but if you don't have the pipes to bring that to people, it will be hard to deliver. Same for shallow geothermal with heat pumps. Urban planning is important, but we say that it's a bit easier because we speak of a smaller project, and we see big opportunities. So it's important to distinguish geothermal heat pumps with other kind of heat pumps because we have different capacities, different efficiency, different cost profile. And if we want to be recognized and to be developed, it's important to make this distinction.
Thank you. Then we have a thank to an answer, to an earlier answer from you. Thanks a lot. I'm connected from Colombia. We are looking forward to bring geothermal projects to the business. Thanks for the opportunity today. Great to be in contact with you.
Maybe, Johan, if you want me just to say from Colombia, indeed, it was not really developed in my presentation, but we see in the next 10 years a big opportunity, especially to provide heating to industry, a lot part of the chemicals, pulp and paper. I mentioned already agri-food, but a lot of industry is low to medium temperature until 150 degrees, a lot of opportunity for providing them the decarbonization.
Okay, thanks again. Another question is these European programs that you introduced, are they in a way also transferable to other countries, for example, Colombia or the Philippines?
No, for third countries, we say so, not European countries, we have other funding than this one, but we are free to share lessons learned, replicate best practices from funding. Notably, I was mentioning tendering. We know for geothermal, if it's only based on LCE, it's hard to compete, but it's technology specific, taking also into account the base load component. It's much better. So of course, we are ready to share lessons learned from Europe.
Okay. So thanks again for your answers and the nice presentation. Now could move on with the slide. Then we may introduce our next webinar, which will be again in German. It's next Friday in 1 week at the same time. And here René Kant will speak about the risk of finding water in the subsurface and the respective temperatures from the technical and geological perspective, but it's in German. So thanks again to you, Phlippe. Looking forward to nice projects, hearing from you from EGEC, and perhaps another presentation about anything. And please check out the website of the EGEC. Here you find all information about the webinars, which were in the past and will be in the future, and also more information about the funding. So thank you to everybody for listening, and looking forward to hear you or see you in the next webinars here. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, and thank you, Ren, for always a good cooperation with your company.